Welcome to The Payoff, the podcast where small business owners who have zero clue what they're doing come for thought-provoking stories of how hard work, sweat equity, and dumb luck created wins for successful business leaders who learned how a little investment, access to secrets no one shares, and a Texas-sized hell yeah, bring it on, paid off. I'm your host, Cynthia Nevels, the CEO of Integrality and a senior business advisor for the Goldman Sachs 1 Million Black Women program. Every week, my team of experts and I will dive deep into the toughest challenges facing entrepreneurs and provide you with the actionable insights and answers to secrets you've always wanted to know that can help your business not only survive, but thrive. Welcome to The Payoff. I'm your host, Cynthia Nevels, and I have an exciting show post-election on today. I'm looking forward to talking about the integration of politics and business, but in a different way. We're going to talk to Mayor Proctor today. Rachel L. Proctor is my special guest today, who's doing magnificent things when it comes to serving the public as well as generating wealth for her family through entrepreneurship. Welcome to the show, Rachel.
Thank you for having me, Cynthia. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. I know you have a very busy day. You have a franchise that you are running. And as I was reading and conducting research, you have a couple of them under your sleeve, or maybe that you have in the works right now. But before we dive into the business side, I did some research and I was looking at the different politicians who have ran successful businesses. One that came to mind in my research is John Corona. John Corona is a Republican who owns Associa. And Associa is a tech company that manages HOA finances and accounting and services. And their trajectory will end up being a $1 billion valuated company if they haven't already surpassed that mark, which is astounding. And they started this company back in, if my memory serves, I'm going to say 1967. And they have grown this business considerably. But that didn't stop John from serving in the House, Texas House, Congress, as well as the Senate as well. And I think sometimes people may think that, how can they do both? And I'm interested in learning from you. How do you manage both at the same time?
Well, for me, it's entrepreneurship is honestly has been a way of life for me. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad was a pastor and he was a businessman. So I grew up working in both the ministry as well as working in the business. I always tell people I can remember being 12 years old, standing in the corner of my dad's office, learning how to make payroll. So business has always been an integral part of my life. I still co-own and operate my family's child care center in Oak Cliff. It's been in our family for over 30 years. My sister and I took over as owners of that facility in 2009 when my dad took ill. My dad is no longer with us. He passed in 2015. But just looking at all of the lessons that we learned growing up around business, and some of it you learn the hard way by trial and error in terms of a lot of the business lessons that I've been able to apply now. So for me, going into public service was somewhat of a natural transition because we had always been taught to serve. We'd always been taught to help our community in any way possible. I've always loved leadership, and not really so much for being in a position to have control or power, so to speak. But what I began to understand is I began to look at a lot of things that were happening in the community. There are only some change that you can make when you get a seat at the table. And so being able to balance business with public service honestly, I do attribute me growing up in working in the family business and working in ministry as giving me somewhat of an advantage, because a lot of the things that new entrepreneurs go through in terms of what it takes to start a business, I'd already kind of gotten that learning curve out of the way. And so when I got into public service, which we can talk a little bit more about how that happened, because honestly, I never saw myself in public service in that way. But when I got into public service, my business was already somewhat running. The systems were already in place. I'd already been able to position my business to where it allowed me the time to be able to fully go into public service, somewhat unencumbered, if you will. Obviously, I still have to work every day, but it allowed me the time to be able to devote to getting my feet underneath me as it pertained to public service.
That's an excellent point. And so I remember when I first heard about you, I think there was a news story when you signed your agreement with Salata. I saw Mayor Rachel Proctor, and I was like, how could that be? I was astounded and surprised, but yet like good for her, because I do recall understanding that it's not unusual for public servants to have to own their own business in order for them to supplement income, but then also have the time to serve their community, which is required. And if you had a 9 to 5 corporate job, that would make it considerably difficult to do.
Absolutely. And I have several colleagues that still work what, just for the terminology, a 9 to 5. But again, they do share some of those same sentiments that you mentioned. Sometimes it's difficult with meetings. Obviously, you find a way whenever you want to do something, you find a way to make it work. However, it does afford me the time and the flexibility with my time to be able to serve as well. And it's so funny to me, Cynthia, how I meet people all the time who don't think that, who think that us as mayor or just elected officials in general don't work jobs outside. That many of them don't know that oftentimes our jobs either pay nothing at all as an elected official or very, very little. And so we don't with these. This is not really how we didn't get into it, but to make the big bucks for sure. We definitely got into it because we have a heart to serve. And so it's funny. And I'll tell this story, and we can continue. But I had a friend. I was working the register at my Salata location the other night, and one of my classmates came in and she didn't recognize me. And I didn't initially recognize her until she started talking. And I asked her name, and we realized we knew each other from school. And she was like, but wait, how are you running this business? Aren't you the mayor? And I'm like, well, I get to do both. I have to do both.
That's a good point.
She's
And
like,
that
how
was
do you do that? She was like, but aren't you the mayor? How can you be a business owner too? And I'm like, yeah, we have to do both.
That is so true. And when you think about it, you really do have to do both. And I think this is a tangent, but I'm going to come back to why it's important. I think that is one of the reasons why we don't have as many what I call regular people who are in politics, because of that you don't get paid for that work to serve the public as much as you would on your job or your own business. And so it is a necessity, but it also takes some internal motivation and commitment as well to the bigger picture. And not everyone is willing or ready to take that on.
Yeah, no, and that was some of the conversation that we had, because I've been elected to office in DeSoto. I first got elected to city council in 2013. So honestly, it's been at this point over a decade that I've given specifically to serving in elected office. And one of the things we talked about, even when I began, that we got paid absolutely nothing, and and obviously there was lots of people, because we've been able to continue with that, and most of the cities in the area that we're in don't get paid at all. And so for many years we got absolutely nothing other than the joy and the pleasure of being able to serve. But that has been a conversation that has been coming up recently for lots of cities in terms of stipends, or just stipends and things of that nature, in terms of looking at what to how to better incentivize others to get involved. Because a lot of times when you do have individuals that work 9 to 5, sometimes they have kids, right? So maybe there's a supplement or a stipend that can help them offset daycare or other costs that would be involved when you talk about looking at creating the time they need to be able to serve. And so that was one of the driving forces behind DeSoto actually implementing a stipend for our elected officials. And so since 2020, a relatively, I think it began in 2020, at the beginning of 2021, DeSoto elected officials do receive a stipend. However, again, it's still just enough to offset some of the costs that come with serving. Oftentimes, many of us and my colleagues will use that to engage in public activities, to engage our constituents, and we use those for different things. But that has been the question of how do we get other individuals that typically have not been in the public service arena involved. And so that has been some of the conversation in terms of how to incentivize them financially to offset the costs that they incur by having to serve and be at meetings and things of that nature.
I think that is a wonderful I wouldn't say gesture. I would say that that is a strategy that is very valuable, in hopes that we can encourage more people to get involved, and not allow finances or financial decisions impact their ability to get more involved in community service and or public service.
Sure.
Um, and so when I looked at your bio and read a little bit more about you, you're very involved in the community in many different ways. Whether that is faith-based organization or a nonprofit organization, community development, economic development as well. You're, it seems everywhere, but I'm sure it's all strategic. But how do you do it all? How do you balance it all when you have so many endeavors and initiatives going on?
Sure. I will say there's an illusion that I do it all, right? I think one of the biggest things for me that I've learned in leadership, and just again growing up in the ministry and growing up in family, is learning the power of delegation and learning the power of building teams and empowering those around you to have, not only giving them assignments and tasks, but also giving them authority to make and having some autonomy over the assignments and tasks that they have, to create leaders. I say a good leader creates other leaders. I don't want anybody beholden to me. Obviously, we want to make sure that they're following the systems, the brand, the and the way that we do things in terms of the level of excellence that we're expecting with anything, whether that's in our businesses or even just in the public service arena. Working with staff and things of that nature, but being able to empower other people to have some autonomy over the things that have to get done, and helping people to buy into the bigger vision is something that I still consistently work on in terms of growing as a leader. And so that is what really helps me to be able to move things forward in terms of a bigger vision. Obviously, I can't do all of it myself. People think that I don't take vacations. They think I don't date. They think I don't do anything outside of being the mayor and business. However, I live a very full life outside of the things that I do publicly. And I'm able to do that because I, again, have worked really hard at building teams and building those that would think about it like I would think about it, right? And so that takes time, and again, just really working with people, but also giving people a little bit of free will to be able to make those decisions on their own. And so that has really helped me to be able to move a lot of the things that, as you mentioned, that you see me do in the community or doing business forward.
I think you dropped some gems here, especially as it relates to delegation. Um, New York University, I work on a team with them, and we talk about African American women entrepreneurs in particular who, I won't say suffer, but they live in the space whereas they exist as superwoman. And that superwoman syndrome is quite toxic, whereas we are not balancing self care, not balancing our roles, we're not balancing and delegating the work. It's almost, I have to do it all if it's going to be right. But what some of us are learning very quickly is that that doesn't work if you're going to grow your enterprise. And that's what I'm hearing you say, that works for you.
Absolutely. And I think for me, one of the things that I tell myself all the time is sometimes we feel like we have to do things,
Mhm.
in terms of whether that's serving, whether that's ministry, whether that's a business idea, all these things. I get to be the mayor of DeSoto. I don't have to be. So the minute that it adds a level of stress or creates more issues than I'm willing to deal with in my life, or no longer is serving me in terms of where I want to be and what I need to get from it as well. Obviously, it's about serving the community. But I think sometimes, as you mentioned, especially as African American women, sometimes there's a phrase that I heard, that kind of likens to what I'm speaking of. We set ourselves on fire to keep everybody else warm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And so the minute that it stops being reciprocal in terms of what it brings to my life and the value that it adds to my life is the day that I step down and move away from it and let somebody else do it that's better suited. I've learned that life is lived in seasons as well.
Mhm.
I don't want to be so tethered to it or let a title or a position become my identity, to where it feels like if I step away from it, then I've lost my purpose. Um, I know my purpose regardless of the medium that I carry their purpose out with, right?
Yeah.
So in this season of life, I'm the mayor, right? There'll be another season of life where I'm not the mayor, but I'll find my purpose and I'll find my footing there. And so I don't want to be so tethered to these things, feeling like I have to do them in order to feel like I have a purpose. I get to do those things. And so I want to make sure that they are reciprocal in terms of what adding value to me and helping me to grow as an individual, but as well as me being able to leave those places that I've been afforded to steward and touch, leaving them better as well.
That's an excellent point. And so that leads me to inquire about why franchising. I recently had It's Okay Harris on one of my shows. She built an empire of 42 Pizza Huts across Louisiana. And I mean, is a powerhouse when it comes to understanding franchising, understanding scaling, understanding growth. And she's about to do it again. And when she was on, she was really just giving us gems related to why she chose franchising versus building her own concept from ground up. She'd rather use the cheat sheet. Is that one of the reasons why you choose franchising?
You took the words right out of my mouth, Cynthia. I will say this. Let me share this with you just as kind of a backdrop to how I got here. Because many people, people will put you in the box that they met you in. However, being a franchisee and again, business in general is absolutely nothing new. It's actually who I am. It's been my lifestyle as long as I can remember. So being a business owner is not anything new. I've started several businesses, outside of even the child care center, and do business consulting and coaching and things of that nature. Actually, in 2017, I wanted to start a salad franchise because there was nothing in our area, and we're still lacking. I tell people we're not a food desert per se, but we are a healthy food desert, in many of the areas that, here in southern Dallas County.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to start an idea. And they say sometimes when you don't move fast enough, somebody will take the idea. And so I always say Salad and Go took the idea that I had in 2017. I wanted to create a salad concept where people could go through a drive-through and be able to order their salads and wouldn't have to get out. And so I always say Salad and Go beat me to it because I didn't move fast enough. But anyway, um in 2017 I wanted to create a concept, and I remember I'd actually even engaged a restaurant consulting firm to start helping me to plan it out and just create this concept. And it just became a little bit overwhelming. Restaurant business is a hard business, and so trying to create something from the ground up, I don't think I was fully ready at the time. Again, I don't think it just wasn't the time, so I put it on the back burner.
Mhm.
And then in 2022, I kind of got this itch, right? Because again, I was still having to go across town
Yeah.
just to get a decent salad. I mean, there were some places where you could grab a little something, but for my lifestyle, I'm primarily vegetarian. I do eat meat sometimes, but I'm primarily vegetarian. So it was just becoming increasingly difficult to be able to find something. So that itch that I had, that entrepreneurial itch that I had, it rose up in 2022. And so my brother and I were talking, and he was like, why don't you just do a franchise? That's the easiest thing, right? It already has the systems and you can just kind of roll it out, XYZ. So I started looking at places that I frequent, and what was surprising to me was many of the healthy food options did not franchise. So even your Salad and Goes and places like that, those are corporately owned stores. They're not, they don't franchise out. And so the light bulb came on when I realized that I eat at Salata all the time. It's one of the places. It was kind of like my go-to and had been for years. And so reached out to them and realized that they did franchise. So I started moving quickly at that time. Ended up talked with the business development manager, did my discovery day, and kind of went from there, and the rest is history. I did end up signing an area development agreement for 3 units. So we have our first unit open already, and then we have 2 other units that we're going to develop. Obviously, I want to do as many as I can, but we'll do first things first.
Yeah.
Again, it's been an incredible experience, and it just reinforced why I do what I do as an entrepreneur. Even as hard as it gets, I can't see myself doing anything else. And to be able to bring an option that people enjoy, as well as an option that I can feel good about what we're serving people, is what it's all about for me.
Attention small business owners. Is your website outdated, or is your marketing falling short, costing you valuable customers? At Mad Mind Studios, we specialize in creating custom websites and marketing strategies that drive results. Right now, we're offering a free consultation and marketing audit to help you get on track. Don't miss out on this opportunity to elevate your business. Visit madmindstudios.com or call us today at 310-402-1613 to schedule your free consultation. Mad Mind Studios, where your growth is our business.
I love that. I owned a vegan restaurant, 3 of them, a food truck and a catering company. I can remember how difficult it was and how challenging the food and restaurant hospitality industry can be. And there are days that I wish I had have had the support that franchise operations supply to their franchisees. And it may have been easier. I'm not quite sure. That's hindsight 2020, but I do know and understand how difficult it can be. And so looking at the recipe for success for you as it relates to managing the franchises, you mentioned systems, you have people, which are incredibly important, good people, important. And then you have processes, you have to access capital. So talk to me about what works for you in your decision.
So for me, whenever I'm in a process of learning, one of my strengths, I took the Strength Finders test many years ago and found out my top strength is learner strength. So that helped me understand why I read profusely. Even as a small child, I have books everywhere in my house. I probably buy books that I never intend on reading. I just like to have the information. But I always want to find myself being a student. And I will say, kind of going back to the benefits of a franchise, one of the things that I found the most in terms of the learning, cutting down on my learning curve, was that we have a great group of Dallas area franchisees that I learn from every single day. As a matter of fact, this afternoon, I'm getting ready to meet with a group of them so that we can discuss some processes and so they can help me to refine some of the challenges that I'm having right now. What sometimes may take people months to figure out in terms of data or food waste or how to maximize your labor costs and all those types of things. I can have a phone call in the afternoon and we can autocorrect those things right away versus me having to feel like I'm out there by myself. So I think one of the biggest benefits that I've seen in terms of being a part of a franchise is honestly the relationships that I build with other franchisees. Many of them have been in this, 10 plus years. So they have a lot of historical knowledge that they're able to share with me whenever I have challenges that they can help me figure them out right away versus me having to kind of sit with those things for weeks and months trying to figure them out on my own. So that's been huge for me. I have a quote that I live by and that I started saying when I got into my role as mayor, and that is progress moves at the speed of relationships. And so for me, some of my progress has definitely been at the hands of many of the relationships that I've been able to cultivate, and relationships that have turned into mentorship, that have turned into listening ears, that have turned into encouragers, that have turned into teachers for me. And so I'm grateful for the relationships that I've been able to build on this journey.
I concur with that. I can't stress enough how important relationships are. I try often to talk to younger entrepreneurs to stress how important it is to maintain good relationships, to maintain your integrity, to maintain your reputation as well, because as we progress, maybe get larger or grow older, those things matter. And it's something you can lean on for years to come. So,
Absolutely.
of process, people, and capital, what would you say is the most important thing that an entrepreneur, a business owner, should be focused on right now in this political climate? Is it access to capital and making sure you're prepared to be able to access it? And the reason I ask that is I often tell people that I find in our community that it's not the lack of access to it because the money is always there.
The money's
It's
there.
that we're not prepared to get it. That's the difference. And so, which would you say is most important in this climate?
I would say probably just based on looking at my own personal journey, making sure you have access to capital, and not even just access to it, like you said, access and preparation to access it. I'll kind of even go back to 2020 when we talk about access to capital. The money was there. The money, we were flush with cash, and plenty of people that probably shouldn't have gotten their hands on money had access to capital, right? Like everybody, but there were some entrepreneurs that again, when we talk about having banking relationships and just business acumen and the language, they really were not able to even compete on the level to get access to the capital because if you talk about a PPP loan, when you talk about needing to have a payroll, many of them were paying their employees under the table or not really paying anything, trying to save on taxes and all these things we do, right? To try to save on the back end instead of better positioning ourselves in the strength of our business on the front end. And so many people didn't have access to it. And so I like what you said about not even really that the access is not there, but it's really being able to position yourself, having your financials, getting an accountant, getting your banking relationship, building relationship with the financial institution or two, right? To make sure that you're posturing yourself, because a lot of times when we approach the bank, and this was a lesson that I had to learn, as though we need them. When the truth is the banks need us. If they're not lending money and they're not making loans and they're not making transactions, they don't, that's not good for them. So being able to financially position yourself and having your paperwork and your documentation in place, so that you can position yourself to go in there and walk in that bank, like you know who sent you there, right? So being prepared for to access capital is I think would be one of the greatest lessons that I think we should all learn going into this new economy and any economy, right? I think just being prepared as a business person. If you say you're going to do business, then do business, right? And there are just some things that you cannot get away without having, and that is your financials. And that is, again, those significant relationships to make sure your business is well capitalized, because especially with the restaurant, you have to be well capitalized in order to get that thing off the ground and to make that thing run. And so that would be what I would say to that question.
More gems. You're absolutely right. And so tell me, Rachel, what's next for you?
I would say, I kind of take it, and this is going to sound like a cliche, but I do take it day by day. I think for me, obviously, I'm in the season of building with my businesses, and I'm having fun doing that, even despite all the challenges and the hard things. That's par for the course. So I'm enjoying this business building season. I'm enjoying continuing to be able to serve my community. And so I'm just going to keep diving into those things and giving it all I have, and just being present. I think sometimes we miss a lot of the moments in the journey that we're on because we're always so focused on what's next. So I try to kind of sit in those moments and enjoy where I am. And then when it's time to move, I say sometimes, and I'm a planner by nature. However, some of the things that have moved my life forward in the most positive trajectory have been more instinctive than they've been intentional. And what I mean by that is there have been some things that it's just when you know it's time to move, it's time to move. And so when those things happen, hopefully I will be open and receptive to the change and to the new season, and we'll go from there. And sorry, they're mowing the grass here at the shopping center. So if you hear noise, that's what it is. I think you can even kind of see the guy on his little lawnmower back there.
Probably an entrepreneur making money. So
Trying
we
to make that money.
Absolutely. I'm super honored and proud to have the opportunity to chat with you, to share these gems with our viewers and our listeners. It is time for us to put our feet level on the ground and to be prepared to grow. And the only way, in my personal opinion, that we're going to be able to surpass the ceiling is to create our own. And so I appreciate you joining me today. My love to you and your loss in 2015. And I hope and wish you that $1 billion mark for you as well.
Yay, I received that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cynthia. It's been fun.
My pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to The Payoff. Now you know what to do. Go ahead and hit the like or subscribe button. Or leave us a review and let us know your thoughts on the latest discussion. We have more secrets to share, so stay tuned for another episode. We'll keep sharing how business leaders turn challenges into opportunities week after week.